Epstein baby. Jeffrey Epstein has a baby. This, while a search for bodies is going on, a search for human girl bodies is going on at Epstein's Zorro Ranch. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Authorities launched a major criminal search of Jeffrey Epstein's former Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. They began searching the 7,600-acre property due to a tip alleging that two girls were buried in the hills outside the ranch on Epstein's orders.
Satan has him. But I could get EpsteinMaxwell. I can get her because she stood by and watched this whole thing. How dare she smile on a private plane when there could be bodies buried at Zorro Ranch? What is wrong with her? Guys, Lynn Shaw, founder, director, Lynn's Warriors, completely dedicated to ending human and sex exploitation of girls and women, of people. What do you think, Lynn, about the latest? Number one, I'm going to circle back to Epstein has a baby. That said, looking for bodies on Zorro Ranch?
Do you hear, Nancy, what we're talking about? We're looking for bodies of potential minors. I want to share with you, we at the Warriors have always spoken with victims of EpsteinMaxwell. I say their names together because they are both equally complicit in our book. And they have always reported to us the real crimes were happening at Zorro Ranch, and nobody was really ever talking about it. It was the Manhattan townhouse. It was the island. Once in a while, Paris. Zorro Ranch. They reported to me several years ago. This is where they talked about impregnating minors. This is where they talked about seeding the race to create this DNA elitist kind of, in their own image with all these tech people. They also filled me in tech people. He was very much, Jeffrey and Ghislaine, they were interested in technology. Go back and look at the history of the Maxwell family. There's a lot of technology in their background. This is what they were interested in. This is a bigger story than, I know this is hard to understand a little bit, sex trafficking townhouse. And also reported, girls reported, now women, they would say to me, Lynn, there was nowhere to run in Zorro Ranch. It was just acres and acres of nothing. We couldn't get away. We had to comply. We're talking about 2 dead bodies. I venture to say, in my opinion, there's a lot more. We're talking about little girls, teens with all of this horrible criminality against their little bodies and things like that. And you know what? I don't understand. Jeffrey was arrested in 2006. We're still talking about this. And I'm afraid the public is becoming habituated to the Epstein-Maxwell story, and we will never get the truth. This is about all victims of Jeffrey Epstein and all victims and survivors of sexual exploitation. And our government has failed. Our law enforcement has failed here, and the FBI is top of the list. Why is Ghislaine the only one ever arrested right now, sitting in some kind of country club, not showering, not eating, whatever she's doing? What is going on here? We demand answers. This is ridiculous now. We're talking about this. 2006 was Jeffrey's first arrest. 20 years later. Who's complicit? Why aren't more in jail? Let's think about those victims. As Dr. Bethany pointed out, the lifelong trauma they suffer, the lives ruined, the families ruined. We have a lot of work to do here, and the government better start answering to us, the people, we the people. We pay taxes. They're not doing their jobs.
To Lynn Shaw joining us, founder, director of Lynn's Warriors. Lynn, the way the girls were lured there, it's classic. It's textbook. They were flown there on private planes. They went swimming, horseback riding, posing for pictures, shopping sprees, and then came.
Yeah, it's called the grooming process, Nancy, where one gains the trust of a vulnerable person. And certainly for a young girl, a teen, a young woman being around power and wealth, celebrities or government officials, it's so exciting. I do have to ask, though, and I'm always asking, where were the parents when all of this was going on? But the grooming process is simply gaining the trust, giving expensive presents, treating them like they've never been treated in their life, making them feel so extra special that these young, impressionable girls and women would do anything, right, to be part of this. So the next step is, okay, we're going to fly off to the ranch. We're going to have a great time. We're going to go horseback riding. We're going to have a chef. We're going to have massages, and we're going to have, mani-pedis and all kinds of stuff, and shopping. Okay, that happens for a little while. And then they go in, typical, predator for the kill. And the girls are trapped. The young women are trapped. Again, as I was told repeatedly, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They couldn't get away. I, in my mind, have nightmares about girls one actually told me she tried running and running and running, and they caught up to her and grabbed her and brought her back to the house. This is what she reported to me. So after all of this, there was nowhere for them to go. And remember, there was also an airstrip on this property. And a source of mine just told me to look at this property and to properly, do digs and things like that would actually be 8.5 to 9 years to properly look over all these thousands of acres. So this is a sexual predator, Ghislaine Maxwell, all of their complicit people with them. And I have to end with asking you, why do we have to keep begging for files to be released, names to be released? These victims have told us names over the years. Let's go and find them. Let's charge them with something. Let's ask them to show us. Let's question people. I do not understand the holdup, but you know what? I fear we will never get to the bottom of this crime ever.
Lynn Shaw, you know that Ghislaine Maxwell, knows what happened at Zorro. She knows, and she took part in it. And no one is making her talk. She's not being charged with a thing. Nothing.
Yeah, I think the question we should be asking is, why is she allowed, from what I hear, my sources, to run the camp? And I have a different take. She just is walking around all smelly. By the way, she should just rot in this camp, by the way, just to offend people, because she's ruling the roost from what we hear. And you know what? She's promised, let's ask these questions. What's waiting for her when she gets out? Is she getting a pardon? Why is all of this? And I have to point out, this is why sex victims don't come forward, don't want to talk about anything, because they see stories. I can't even call this a story, a crime spree that's gone on for decades like this. And they say, why bother? Because the power, the wealth, and this woman, a woman doing this to girls and young women, smiling. This is why they don't come forward, because they say nobody believes us. Nobody wants to hear what we have to say. And so Pam Bondi better get these files released. Even that, you know what? Again, I'm going to maintain we are never going to see the videos. There's a lot of video we heard about. I don't know where the videos are. More pictures. What's going on here? So you know what? This is such a disservice to sex victims all over the United States and across the world. But the question is, why is she allowed to run the camp? I'm calling it a camp because we hear she disappears twice a week in a big black SUV and is off for 2 hours doing something. We don't know what that is, and then comes back and nobody opens their mouths. So we should be pressing on, why is this allowed to happen? What's going on with her? Why? We cannot give up on this story. We have to talk about it 24/7, 365.